flight to and landing at the operational strip. Now the farmer has brought us a map to help us navigate our way to his airstrip. And before we leave, we can see here that we're going to need to steer a track of 120 magnetic, and 28 kilometres at the speed we'll be travelling will take us approximately 15 minutes to get us in the general area of his airstrip. He's also given us another feature in that there's a town out to the northeast, and he's approximately 6 kilometres southwest of the town. So between those two figures, we should be able to get ourselves in the general area and then start looking for some of the features that he's drawn on the map. And they are out on the eastern side of the strip. There's a creek running through a dam. Coming back towards the strip, he's got a clump of trees. His house is up to the north of the strip. He has trees along the northern boundary of the paddock the strip's in, and some trees along the eastern boundary. There's a gate on the northern boundary. He has a gate on the eastern boundary. The strip runs up the centre of a paddock and it comes to an intersection in the fence line. He has a windsock and a shed on the northern boundary. Some trees to the north. The superheap, which should stand out being white, on the northeast corner, and we would expect the farmer to be somewhere in the vicinity of the superheap. And he has a big clump of bush marked here on the southern side of the strip. Now from all this, we should be able to get in the plane, fly out, and actually find our way to this airstrip.
Yeah, okay, Barry, I got you spotted. You're about 5 miles to the northeast. If you just keep coming up that road, you'll come right over us.
Airfield identification and inspection. First thing is fly around the general area, making sure that everything on our sketch map fits in with what's on the airfield or the ag strip that we're going to land on. Align your airstrip with your map. If you have two-way communications with the loader driver, he can guide you towards the strip. Preferably have the farmer or your loader at the loading area. As can be seen here, we have the farmer at the loading area waving to us. Check the wind direction by the use of wind indicators if it is on the strip, or by the means that we've explained before. This strip happens to have a wind indicator on it, and we have a southerly wind blowing. Check both ends of the airstrip for power lines and any obstructions, which we're doing now. We're flying at a height above 100 feet. We shouldn't hit any obstructions at that height. As we can see here, this has got a good getaway out to the west. We're now flying east. We just fly along the airstrip. Check the eastern end. We can see that it also slopes off to the east, which means our landing will be made back into the west and slightly uphill. The airstrip looked reasonably clean. There didn't look to be any stumps or major holes in it. What we will do now is do a low run checking the actual surface of the strip, also checking the slope and undulation to the airstrip. As you can see here with normal agricultural strips, they're very hard to distinguish. We can just see a lighter coloured line in the grass, determining that it is actually an airstrip. We're flying along at low level now.
Yeah, the condition of the strip is just a little bit rough, but not too bad. A little bit wet.
Our next step is to actually land on the strip. As we can see there, we had quite a good escape route if we have to do an overshoot. As I'm approaching the strip, I'll just point out the point at the airstrip where I would normally make the decision to actually go round. We're landing in an uphill situation. Set the aeroplane up in approach. We will get some false horizon effect down near the ground, so just be wary of that. Set the aeroplane up in a short field approach situation. And remember to actually parallel the hill before we start our round out. The point that I'd use is the start of the clumps of trees to do a go round. That would be our actual go round point there. As you can see, we're getting a false horizon there. We're following the airstrip up, closing the throttle, holding it off. As can be seen, the airstrip is a little bouncy. A few undulations in it. We'd bring the aircraft to a stop and taxi right to the end of it. We'll just keep going. We've got the farmer here guiding us up to the
Before commencing any operation from an agricultural strip, always walk the strip, checking for any dangerous objects. Pay particular attention to the strip's surface condition.
This ground here today, the grass surface is nice and short. The only problem that we would have with this surface is that here it is damp. So we'd have the bad braking effect as the aircraft's coming to a stop. We could tend to lock the wheels up and skid. And on takeoff, of course, we'd have the problem of the extra takeoff run due to the water on the grass causing more friction. And of course, we'd have a longer takeoff run. We'd have to allow for that in putting our load in. Now, the other problem we do have here is if we look back up to the west, we have a blanket of trees down the side, and we have the wind coming over the trees. As we come out from behind the trees, as can be seen out here, the area is clear, we'd get a very strong crosswind effect, and we'd just have to be ready for that. We'd have a lot of turbulence, and the aircraft would want to weathercock that way. And it'd be about halfway down our takeoff run. Now looking in the direction of takeoff, we can see that the strip actually slopes away here on about a probably 0.5% slope. The advantage of this slope is that the aircraft will accelerate quicker going downhill, and also that the ground does disappear away from us. So the aircraft will leave the ground earlier. Looking further out, in our ground inspection of the strip, what we're looking for here is that we have a getaway in case we run into some turbulence, any downdrafts. We need to be able to go somewhere. As you can see out to the left, we have a gully that runs down, and this we would use as a getaway in the event of any problems. Agricultural airstrip requirements, minimum dimensions. The takeoff distance required is determined by the PA charts for the conditions of the day, as we'll see in program 11. The first 75% of the chart, the strip has to be the centre section of 9 metres, the surface smooth, and we should be able to drive a heavily sprung vehicle at 50 kilometres an hour over it without discomfort to the passengers. On the outer either side, for 7.5 metres, we must have an obstruction clear area that we can safely manoeuvre the aircraft without damage. And in between we have a 10.5 metre surface safe for runoff, which means if we suffer a brake failure or the aircraft swings off the takeoff section for some reason, we will not sustain any damage to the aircraft. This adds up to a total of 45 metres for the overall width. Coming down, for the last 25% of the PA chart, we must have a clearway obstacle clear gradient of 1 in 40 for our climb out. And from that point, we need another approach and takeoff area of an obstacle clear gradient of 1 in 20 for 230 metres from the end of the effective takeoff area. And we must be able to, in this area, maintain a height of 50 feet above any obstacles, and we can have a curved takeoff for this, either left or right. Now looking at the airstrip from the side, our first 75% of our PA chart must be no more than an overall gradient of 1 in 8. Although we can have undulations in the takeoff run, providing it does not affect the safety of the aircraft, and it still is not more than 1 in 8 for the overall length. Then we come into our obstacle clear gradient of 1 in 40 for the last 25%, and then our approach and takeoff area of 1 in 20 for 230 metres. If the overall gradient of the whole strip area is more than 1 in 50, then we must do one-way operations. That is, we would land up the hill and we would take off down the hill. Finally, let's look at the cross-section of the airstrip. The centre smooth area that we use for takeoff, the transverse gradient on this must not exceed a gradient of 1 in 33. The 10.5 metres on either side, that's the surface we use for runoff, must not exceed a 1 in 20 gradient, and the obstruction clear area at either side of the strip, the 7.5 metres, must not exceed a gradient of 1 in 8. The effect of the transverse gradient on a tailwheel aircraft is that the aircraft will tend to want to swing up the gradient. This will effectively increase the takeoff run because we'll have to use brake to keep it straight. The effect of the longitudinal gradient is that the aircraft will accelerate quicker, so it will shorten our takeoff run. On undulating strips, just be wary of premature liftoff. Aircraft may lift off and then settle back on the ground, and this will effectively increase the takeoff run. The effective transverse gradient with the nose wheel aircraft of the PL12 is that the aeroplane will tend to turn down the hill. All we have to do is use opposite rudder to operate the nose wheel steering to straighten it. And the same effects on the longitudinal gradient is that it will make it shorter, and just remember the premature liftoff. Taking off from this strip, as we can see, the strip actually drops away from us in front. So to keep the aircraft straight, we need to pick a point when the aircraft is lined up on the strip to head straight forward. Now the point we're using here is the dead tree on the left-hand side. It's out far enough that we'll be able to use it all the way through the takeoff run. We do a normal takeoff. Remember, because the strip is dropping away, it should decrease our takeoff roll, and we'll just let the aircraft leave the ground, or the ground leave the aircraft. Is that we don't actually bump ourselves into the air. We have a flatter getaway. As we can see, we're not climbing extremely well. We can head down to the left there if we got stuck between the trees. However, we've got enough height now to turn back up the hill. We have another getaway straight in front of us. Now we're turning to follow the ridge up.
Now let's see what that takeoff looked like from the ground. Wind shear on approach and landing. As we get closer to the ground, a strong wind gradient causes a decrease in airspeed, an increase in the rate of descent, and it also creates additional turbulence. Power is often needed to control the rate of vertical descent, particularly at maximum landing weights. In this situation, the pilot has experienced a very high wind shear factor and hasn't applied power early enough. The result? A very bumpy landing. The pilot is now using power with minimal braking to keep the aircraft straight in these gusty conditions. Some aircraft are now fitted with smoke generators. These can be of considerable assistance in determining wind speeds and direction in all aspects of agricultural work.